I think there are two things to it. One is autonomy and one is sanctity of life.
Right.
Autonomy, people argue that it's your own body. You can do whatever you want. You can decide when you want to die, how you want to die.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the people who believe in sanctity of life, they say no, every life is very, precious.
Yeah. And you can see the arguments for it. I'm biased, obviously, right? I believe in Islam. I believe that, everyone... Because, look, our lives are finite, okay? And I think the point you were saying earlier on, Musharraf, was that, God doesn't put more than you can bear. Although sometimes it feels beyond, whether it be a mental strain, whether it be a physical strain. But even still, there is a cure for most things. It's just that it hasn't been found yet, right?
I mean, there are those very vulnerable people out there, when they go through pain, the first thing which would come to their mind is, I wish I wasn't here in this world.
Yeah.
And if you're giving them the option of assisted dying, they would go for that option. But there's a possibility they will regret it afterwards.
Well, you're not going to regret it because you're not going to be here.
Of course, exactly. You won't be here.
It's going to be full stop, end of story.
Exactly. But if you had a second option available, you wouldn't go for assisted dying. If you knew that someone can take away that pressure from you, the tension from you, that stress from you, you wouldn't go for assisted dying.
Rasulullah, Rasulullah, Muhammadur Rasulullah.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings to our listeners out there. Welcome to Monday's edition of the Drive Time Show. You're here live with myself, Taliban, and Imam Musharraf Khan. And we're here presenting live from our studios in our Voice of Islam studios in South London. And you know what? It's got a bit cold now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah?
It's very cold now.
I mean, not in the studio, mind you, but I was actually out and about on the weekend. And yeah, it was rainy. And it's you feel definitely, okay, it's just turned into December. But we are in winter's grasp now.
Without snow.
Not if you're in the north, right? I'm sure they've had lots of snow. I think it was last weekend we had Storm Bert. So that came in. And, not in London so much, but it's most probably for the better, because once snow comes and then you get the leaves on the train lines, stuff like that, and then you've got to get delays, and that's going to repeat itself throughout winter. But less about the weather. As always, on Drive Time, we kind of deal with very contemporary subjects, and we've got two subjects today. What have we got on our plate for our listeners?
So today we'll be talking about assisted dying. As you know, wow. Just a few days ago they passed a bill in the parliament where MPs, they actually voted for assisted dying.
Mm-hmm. I'll be the devil's advocate here. Is it compassion or, is it a slippery slope? So we're going to discuss it. And in terms of terminally ill adults, we could call it the end of life bill. And that's been passed, as Musharraf has pointed out earlier on. Now, is assisted dying truly a compassionate choice for those who are suffering from terminal illnesses, or does it represent a failure in our healthcare system and society values? And that's quite poignant because it brings to my mind an MP, a Labour MP, who had made that point. Because is it the short end of the stick, is the slippery slope, meaning that, okay, you know what, because the healthcare system can't cope, right, with your chronic illness, then, and we can't afford now to give you a bed, right? Because you know what, there's so many, pressures on the NHS that this is a get-out clause. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's the main question. The core question is if everything was available, the palliative care, if it was available and people actually had that care and the NHS was able to support it, would people still ask for this bill to be passed, or would assisted dying or the arguments for assisted dying, would they still exist? I think that's the core to everything, really. Is it the healthcare system
obviously it comes...
Which is failing, or is it really people want assisted dying?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, we know in Switzerland it's always been there. There is that groundswell between, and you have the emotive arguments of, like, say, for instance, you have got motor neuron disease, right? It's a degenerative disease. There's no cure for it nowadays. And, you know, to see maybe a relative, a friend, go through that kind of pain, and to know that actually, you know, in the near future, there's no cure for it. That is the argument, I suppose, right?
Yes.
In favor of the assisted dying. But conversely, we just don't know. Here on the Voice of Islam, you know, we promote Islamic values, and it totally goes against the grain that one should choose to take one's own life. That is not in our choice, right? Correct.
Yes,
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think there are two things to it. One is autonomy and one is sanctity of life.
Right.
Autonomy, you know, people argue that it's your own body. You can do whatever you want. You can decide when you want to die, how you want to die. Whereas the people who believe in sanctity of life, they say no. Every life is very, you know, precious, and you cannot do it. It's God-given. Only God is allowed to decide. Even if you're going through any trial in your life, at the end of the day, those trials are there, so you increase yourself in spirituality. So
exactly.
there are, you know, these 2 points which one needs to keep in mind when you talk about this.
Exactly. And you can see the arguments for it. I'm biased, obviously, right? I believe in Islam. I believe that, you know, everyone... Because, look, our lives are finite, okay? And I think the point you were saying earlier on, Musharraf, was that, you know, God doesn't put more than you can bear. Although sometimes it feels beyond, you know, whether it be a mental strain, whether it be a physical strain. But even still, you know, there is a cure for most things. It's just that it hasn't been found yet.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, there are those very vulnerable people out there, you know, when they go through pain, the first thing which would come to their mind is, I wish I wasn't here in this world.
Yeah.
And if you're giving them the option of assisted dying, they would go for that option. But there's a possibility they will regret it afterwards.
Well, you're not going to regret it because you're not going to be
Of course,
here.
exactly. You won't be here.
It's going to be full stop,
exactly,
end of story.
Exactly. But if you had a second option available, you wouldn't go for assisted dying. If you knew that someone can take away that pressure from you, the tension from you, that stress from you, you wouldn't go for assisted dying.
In the countries whereby there has been an assisted dying bill and has been passed, like Canada, the actual palliative care systems that they have actually not performed well, and they've withered away.
Yes.
So, yeah, I suppose we are a bit biased, right? We're Voice of Islam.
I think at the end of
and
the
we
day...
should be, but, and the caveat is, I still think, regardless of the fact of your religious persuasion, it's a slippery slope.
I mean, we believe in prayers, isn't it?
Yeah.
People who are in palliative care, there's a possibility they get cured, isn't it?
Yeah.
Also,
sure.
you know, if someone doesn't believe in prayers, they believe in miracles, for example.
Yeah.
There's a possibility that miracles happen, and that person who is there, rather than going for assisted dying or being for his whole life till his end in the palliative care, there's a possibility he will be cured. So you should always look at the positivity of life, at the sanctity of life, rather taking the easy way out, the easy route, isn't it? And then saying, okay, I would rather die.
Yeah, exactly.
And end my life.
But to speak more regarding this topic, we're joined by our next guest for the afternoon, Alex Schadenberg. I hope I've pronounced your name correctly, Alex. Now, Alex is the Executive Director of Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you, Alex. Thank you for joining us on the Drive Time Show.
No, thank you very much. Yes, so the whole issue of euthanasia, assisted suicide, I'm in Canada, and how the law originally started and where it's gone are two different things.
Right.
And that's to me a very important point. Why I'm saying that is
Because I haven't even asked the question yet, Alex. It's amazing.
Well, you can ask the question. That's fine. But
you've read my mind. But that's exactly a very valid point. Well, actually, please continue, because it's something that Alistair, a previous guest, our previous guest, was like saying that although the law as it stands may be pristine, but it's how that law has been, let's say, changed once it has actually come into being. So, please carry on.
Okay, so Canada's law from the beginning was designed to expand because it lacked definition within the law. So it was designed from the beginning to expand.
Had a vagueness.
But yes, correct. But even the requirement for terminal illness was quickly struck down by a lower court, and the government went to then move to this non-terminally ill euthanasia deaths based on this whole question of equality. So the problem is that when you legalize assisted suicide and euthanasia, the politicians are trying to sell legislation that the politicians will vote yes on in order to get it through. But once it's legal, then they'll say, well, does the language of this legislation, is it fair to all people? And the answer is no, because obviously it denies some people, but it allows for another group of people. And that's what happened in Canada with the quick expansion of the law. So another thing is these things like waiting periods. They have waiting periods in the law. They say, well, we have to wait 12 days or 10 days. Canada's law originally said 10 days. And they said that was absolutely devastating because some people have forced them to wait 10 days to die. And they said that was inconceivable to force these people to wait. So you see how the law is quickly pressured to change and to grow. Yeah,
manipulated in a sense. So, I mean,
that's correct.
In these terms then, Alex, what are the biggest risks actually to this bill for us in the UK to, say, for instance, more vulnerable parts of the population, for instance, those who have disabilities, mental health issues, or just, the elderly?
Well, what you're going to see is that there's going to be a social pressure on people because we talk about this whole issue of people being, they say, without request, but usually it's the pressure that's put on people. Then the second thing comes to, okay, first of all, I should say something which is fundamental here. This is about killing people. So when you're talking about life and death, as you would agree, we're talking about a pretty serious issue.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's not something that you can come back on, right? It's an all-in.
No, you can't change. Once you are dead, you are dead. That's exactly it.
Right.
It doesn't change. And the other thing is, with this, once it starts becoming normalized, which starts happening reasonably quick, because some doctors start saying, this was a wonderful thing. They enjoy it almost. Some of them become professional assisted dying doctors.
Right.
What happens is
wow, that sounds so gruesome in a sense, really, right? I mean, this was one of the points that I was, bringing to our previous guest, that in my mind, a doctor, all right, even if it's a palliative care doctor, is there for the sanctity of life and trying to preserve life to its natural end. But for the idea that you actually have or will have doctors who are promoting death as an alternative, because death is not an alternative. We're here at the Voice of Islam. Death is a part of our journey, right? It's terminal for sure, but it's not the end. Okay, it's not it may be the end of for you on this earth, but there is life eternal. Okay, so for that idea, it just totally throws me, right? It's good. It's like a curveball to me to think of a doctor actually promoting suicide.
Right, and the funny thing is, it's not really a suicide, even though it's sold that way. It's really about a manslaughter or a homicide because of the direct involvement of the doctor. A suicide would be a self-act, as terrible as that is.
Yeah, true. So it's murder.
I don't think there's anything good about suicide, but this is now a doctor directly involved in the act. So the other thing you've done with the UK bill, which is interesting, is it's created to have to change. Because, for instance, they added in this situation where there'd have to be someone from a judge or someone from whether they be an appointed person, whatever, from a court who would have to oversee it. But if you consider just the sheer number of deaths we're going to be talking about, if you just look at the population of the UK,
70 odd million.
and you start adding up the number of deaths, you would have to have quite a few professional people who are just adjudicating these deaths. You're going to create and then they're going to say it's unfair if that process takes too long, because they're going to say, look, so-and-so is suffering. So they're going to create a natural situation where someone's going to say, well, you have to get rid of that because it's creating this undue affliction to those who you're going to approve anyway.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
This is how it comes together, how the law starts falling apart. The other thing about it is, in Canada, they have doctors, they have what you call MAID teams.
Okay.
So this is the other thing that soon comes. So what happens is there's quite a few doctors who want nothing to do with it. They say, I don't kill people, that's it, I don't do that. And others who are willing to do it. So they set up MAID teams in the hospital. Well, the MAID team is not only involved with the killing, the MAID team then goes to make sure that all the patients know it's available to them.
Okay.
So you get the situation of the sales pitch going on throughout the hospitals by the MAID team.
This sounds so bizarre to me. Kind of like you're selling death, right?
That's exactly it.
Wow.
Well, they would say they're selling the fact that you can have this, because they'll say not everyone realizes this is available to them.
Yeah, I can eat, I don't know, 10 bags of M&Ms, but that doesn't make it good for me, right?
That's right. But this becomes a form of coercion too.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine going through a difficult time, and think about our human nature, and we're going through an illness, and now a MAID team comes and knocks on your door and says, oh, by the way, we're wondering,
here's a
did you
get-out
know
clause.
that you could have an assisted death?
Yeah.
And they're thinking, I'm going through a terrible time. Maybe that's the best thing for me. So instead of getting the support they need, they're being sold death.
Yeah, it's the easy way out, I think we've said before.
I mean, when you look at the definition of doctor, it's a person who is qualified to treat and cure people who are ill.
Yeah.
The question is curing people or treating people.
Yeah, but the thing is, Musharraf, right, and Alex, a doctor has to take the Hippocratic Oath, right? And
they don't take a Hippocratic Oath anymore.
Oh, don't they?
It's possible that
Am I that
Muslim
big?
doctors...
Am I that much of a dinosaur? I thought they still did, right? Are you serious?
No, they don't. They take a type of an oath, but it's not the Hippocratic Oath.
Okay, but I'm sure within
older
that
doctors
oath...
took them. So if you're looking at the older doctors who are still there, the ones who have worked all their life, many of them did take the Hippocratic Oath. Yeah. That's correct.
But even in terms of maybe it's a newer type of oath, but towards the end of the oath, it's a solemn caveat that they are there to preserve life, right? So,
but it doesn't say what it used to say.
Oh,
the do no harm has been reinterpreted. But what I will say to you is there's another topic that needs to be talked about, and that's actually how they kill you.
Right. Okay.
Because we're talking about an assisted suicide, the drug regimen that they use and how they do it. People want to avoid that discussion because they want you to think this is all about a peaceful death now. So they're selling you a peaceful death. But it's not really about a peaceful death. It is about killing you. And how they do it is they have to first put you into coma. And they have to, so they use a three type of drug system. The first way is the first drug causes you to go into coma. The second drug causes you to go into paralysis, because the third drug is very harsh. That's the one that actually shuts down your lungs.
Right.
So they have to put you into paralysis first so you don't go into convulsions.
Wow.
Because, if you start looking at the studies, before they started using the paralytic drug, a lot of families were upset as they saw their family member to go into convulsions.
Yeah, I can imagine.
The third drug actually shuts down the lungs, so you actually stop breathing.
Right.
And when you stop breathing, then your heart will stop. So it's actually a death which is more similar to drowning than it is a death by just shutting down the heart.
Sounds very painful just listening to it.
I mean, that's the thing. I say we, right? But there's this romanticized idea that actually assisted dying is just one injection, and the recipient just passes away in their sleep. But that's definitely put a different a viewpoint on it, really.
Well, if you look at last year's data out of Oregon, it shows you that the longest death last year in Oregon took 137 hours.
Wow,
137 hours. Start adding that up.
137 hours for that person to actually pass away.
And every year you get quite a few deaths that took 3 days. 2 days is common. they say it might take between 8 and 12 hours, but some of them take much longer than that.
Mm.
So when you're looking at this, you're saying, you mean mom's going to be laying in bed for 24 hours as she's dying and passing away, as her lungs are filling with fluid?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know they have her in a coma, but are you telling me she's not suffering? Because we don't actually know.
Yeah,
That's the point.
exactly.
You don't know because she can't respond.
Exactly. She's in a coma.
So what's the difference between those people who are dying through assisted death and those criminals in the U.S. who are put, there on the bed and they receive injections as well?
Yeah, they have lethal injections, right? I don't think.
Just sounds similar as well.
It sounds pretty similar, right? The actual outcome and the process.
Lethal injection in the U.S. Is the same sort of drug regimen. They're doing the same sort of things. Wow. That's correct.
That's terrible. But Alex, it's been a pleasure to speak to you this afternoon on the Drive Time Show about such a emotive subject. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, have a good day.
Yeah, bye.
Some of the stuff that you just heard, Musharraf. Yeah,
sounds very painful. Just listening to it.
Yeah, beggars belief, right? 137 hours. How many days is that?
Or 3 days.
Wow.
Oh, no, it's more than 3 days, but he mentioned 3 days as well.
Yeah, so it's terrible. I suppose why you would, as a family member of someone who is suffering from a chronic illness, right, would contemplate putting that member of your family who is suffering to a assisted death is to actually, the pain that they're going through. But to replace the pain that they're going through with this elongated, right? And maybe, okay, we're taking one end of the spectrum here, 137 hours. But just the way that, you are, for want of a better description, put down, right? It sounds gruesome.
It does.
Yeah, to be put in a coma, then to be paralyzed, and then finally to be injected with a drug which stops you breathing.
Stops your heart.
Yeah, it sounds totally inhumane to me.
محسنا ظهر العطايا والجدى